let me know.
Yeah, I also wanted to say that I will have to leave at like 10 to 3. That's okay, because I have.
You're fired.
Sorry, yeah, no, I just don't want to sound disrespectful.
No, that's fine.
You know,
You don't know me yet. I over talk, and so I often go over, so don't feel bad if you have to leave. Because I have so many personal stories to share and experience and stuff, so I tend to go over. So we're going to be talking about manufacturing. So the overview, which again continues what we talked about a few weeks ago, importing from China, overview, sourcing and purchasing, and shipping.
Before you start, Peter,
Yeah.
sorry. Tom, were you aware that we had a part 1 to this session? No. So you just found out
Yeah,
recently,
that's
like
like-
literally? Okay, right. And you're a World Skills client already? Are you or?
I am a client of OCCSB, I believe. That is
Chinese
another
Community
charity
Center?
organization.
The Chinese community?
Yes, that
Okay.
one, because my wife is working there.
I see,
And
okay.
she shared that, I'm like, yeah, I'm down. Then I registered for One Hub and I
Right.
received that, whatever free invitation with a QR code.
Right. Did you get an invitation to meet with Sarah, our intake counselor?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay, so I'll get her to contact you because in order for you, well, obviously you're here today and you can benefit from all the information, but generally what we want clients to be attending these sessions. So we would want to make you a World Skills client.
Okay, okay.
But so
So-
that-
Same cost.
Okay, so but it's the same as like a nonprofit, other nonprofit organization.
yes, correct. Yeah,
They're charity.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
World Skills is a nonprofit, just like the Chinese Community Resource Center. And just like where,
I work for the
Care
Ottawa
Works,
Community
yeah.
Loan Fund.
yeah.
So next time when, because I heard there's someone online, would that be possible if I joined that online? Because I had to take half a day off at work to
Oh,
come
wow.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it kind of depends on the session. In this case, yes, it would have been on, you could have joined on Zoom, but in some cases, we don't allow joining on Zoom, but we will send you a recording
okay,
and the
Oh, that's
PDF
good.
and the
Okay.
PDF afterwards.
sounds good.
So either way, you can access the information, you just have to let us know
Okay,
what your preference
Yeah, yeah.
is.
I would
Okay,
just need to follow up because I've never heard about that specific organization and my wife shared, so I
okay.
registered there and.
Okay, so One Hub, the One Hub program is part of World Skills Employment Center. World Skills is the nonprofit organization, and we have 12 programs within World Skills. One Hub that targets entrepreneurs is one of them. Okay, just to give you some background. But yeah, our intake counselor will make an appointment with you, and there may be other services you may benefit from participating with us, joining our One Hub program, and she'll talk to you about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. So if you look at the at this world map here, as you can see, China is by far the biggest manufacturing hub, right? If you look at on the Asia side, US number 2, and Japan, Germany. Where is tiny little Canada? Well, it's on the top left side on top of the US, and we barely exist, right? So we think of ourselves as exporter. We think of ourselves as a source of products for the world, but in fact, we're natural resources. We don't really sell that many finished products other than car parts and a few things. And so, generally speaking, without the US, we wouldn't be that strong, right? And so everything we do is US based, US focused for many, many reasons. Again, if you look at the world map, different countries and even different parts of the country focused on various industries. So it would not surprise you to see that, again, Canada is very focused on motor vehicle parts. Most of the natural resources produced in Canada are in fact exported to the US, turned into a finished product, and then re-imported into Canada. As you're going to see in a few slides, even things that we buy from China, or when we look in the back of the product and you see made in China, is not coming in directly from China. whether you're looking to source from China or Asia, understand that different regions have their own focuses. And so when you're looking to source a product or you want to do manufacturing somewhere, be sure to find the right location, because that's going to save you a lot of headaches from logistics, from pricing, support. And it's going to help you pinpoint if the person you're trying to buy from is what we call a trading company, meaning a reseller, or a true factory. Later in this talk, I'm going to be talking about the differences between trading companies and factories. And understand that the vast majority of quote unquote factories you find online are not factories, they're resellers. They lie, they just straight up lie. China is the world's manufacturing superpower, right? It represents nearly 30% of the global manufacturing. But things are changing. Even these last few months, there's a lot of pushback, both from the US government, Chinese government, and the world at large. The Chinese government doesn't want all the pollution. China's changing very, very rapidly. They don't want to be the dollar store of the world anymore. And that means that the very high polluting, cheap plastic stuff is moving to the outskirts. So Western China and very Northeast China. So the very developed areas like Guangdong province, for example, Zhejiang and elsewhere, they want to become high-tech hubs. China is trying to become the next Japan or the next South Korea. So if you're looking to produce something that's very cheap or very energy intensive or very polluting, chances are you can find it for cheaper in a neighboring country. And it's probably owned by Chinese. So the Chinese are moving to Thailand, to Cambodia, to many other countries, and setting up their factories there. And in fact, the Chinese government is giving incentives to Chinese factory owners to move out. So they're getting free money to move out. Vietnam is exploding right now with all the Chinese moving there for factories. These are pretty typical products that Americans and Canadians tend to buy. So as you can see, they control the vast.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So would Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam be cheaper than China today?
Depends on what product it is.
So
But
similar product.
it could be.
So in terms of labor laws, in terms of logistics, in terms of ease of working with, so are they a risk to pay? Is there a risk to that?
China is a lot easier to deal with,
Mhm.
right? Because infrastructure is already set up.
Okay.
Things are hodgepodge, like in Vietnam, for example, shipping is just not as organized yet, but it's changing, right? It's rapidly changing. Most computer hard drives, for example, they're made in Thailand, right? So there's a lot of things. Often they will make it in Vietnam or Thailand or somewhere else and bring it back to China to then ship out with other components and other things. Because the Chinese just trade between each other, right? Or a Chinese factory owner might have factories in other countries and then bulk up his products with other products from other factories and then export it.
So is there part of the Chinese supply chain?
It's becoming that way. It was not set up that way, but it's becoming that way, yes.
So it's still going to China, even though.
Sometimes, again, it depends. If you're buying one hard drive, you're better off in China, right? But if you're looking to do hard drive business, like containers, then you're better off in Thailand. So again, like we have to be careful how we talk about this because it really depends on what scale we're talking about, right?
So if you're an expert, you might be able to build value by going to the components manufacturer in these countries rather than going to China.
Absolutely. The Vietnamese government, for example, is giving huge incentives to the Chinese factory owners to move there, right? So tax incentives, and land, and all those things. They have a very educated workforce. They complain less than the Chinese right now. People think the Chinese factory workers are
robots.
Ready to work
Right.
for a bowl of rice.
Right, not anymore. Things have changed a lot, right? They're pushing for their rights, they're really, they're unionizing, they're organizing,
They're becoming communists.
they're fighting back, right? Which is great for them, but not great for the factories. So factories will say, okay, then I'll go somewhere else, right? I'll go to Malaysia, I'll go to Indonesia, I'll go somewhere else, right? And so that's what's happening. So the world is changing very, very rapidly. And then you have, of course, the political stuff between, there's war in Ukraine, there's a new Cold War starting, a financial Cold War. There's all the IP stuff that China got away with is not getting away with anymore, right? So all the intellectual property theft, all the things that were happening, right? So China would say to German companies, for example, come set up your factory here, and then they would just take all the IP, right? That's really not happening right now. And so for, again, many reasons, if you're talking the high-tech stuff, China's struggling. And so, as you know, my wife is Chinese, and so my in-laws are Chinese, and most of my friends are Chinese, and there's a lot of stuff happening that is not really public right now. Factories are closing left and right. The unemployment in the youth is well over 25%. Well over, right? So a lot of social and economic challenges happening in China right now. So it's a good time for us. There's a good opportunity for us to manufacture or to get a good deal, because the factories will take almost any deal right now. They just want to stay open.
But where would renewables be in China? Renewable energy like solar, PVs?
That's a complex question. I can say that for the most part, they're really pushing. They have no choice, right? A lot of China is still using coal for electricity. So they're really pushing the solar stuff. The quality of the solar panels is still not where it could be, although there's new technology coming out. One good thing that China has is the electric vehicle industry is like booming big time. Like I didn't drive when I was in China. I was taking the public transport, and most of the buses I took was electric. Right? So like city electric buses and all that
So
stuff.
that means cells and batteries and all that.
So the infrastructure is quite strong. They produce everything, right? So like I was running an electric bicycle factory, right? Electric mobility factory, I should say. And all that is lithium ion batteries, right? All manufactured in China, all the tech and all the research. Even my factory, we did research on this stuff. When I left the factory, I built the factory over 5 years. When we went from 30 something employees to well over 120 when I left, right? And I helped get about 18 patents by the time I left. And so they're very, very strong on R&D. Chinese factories who have access to at least someone with a master's plus degree, they can set up an office in the high-tech parks and get up to 1 million plus renminbi per year grants. This is not a loan. This is just free money to do R&D. So there's a lot of Chinese, there's fake stuff as well, because it's
What's R&D?
research and development. And so all that to say, the Chinese government is spending stupid money to push for the R&D, the research, the new technology stuff,
Innovation.
right? Which we don't see here, right? In Canada, you might have access to shred credits, but again, you need to make money and all those things, and it's not the same. We don't compete in any shape or form with China or elsewhere when it comes to access to research money, for example.
So they are trying to fill in the gap which they have. This R&D.
Right.
Because usually they are typical products from Europe.
They don't want to be, again, the dollar store place, right? All the cheap stuff, like leave it to India and Bangladesh and all those places. That's what the Chinese are thinking. Like we just want the high-tech stuff, the big value stuff, right? So anything that's cheap or polluting, again, all those things, they want to get away from that. Both on the government level, and government dictates whatever happens in China, right? They set the pace. And so all that to say, yes, your umbrella and your shoes and everything is currently made in China, but that's going to change. Chinese are very big right now in Ethiopia, for example, Addis Ababa, running shoes factories, for example, that industry is booming. The owner is Chinese, but the workers are Africans, right? So you're seeing now Chinese thinking globally, where can we set up our infrastructure? Where can we get access to good deals, land, tax rebates, all that stuff? Where can we employ the local population? But the owners and the management is still Chinese. That's what's happening right now. So the Chinese are leaving China in droves for many reasons. And by Chinese, I mean the owners, right? The factory owners and stuff. Things are changing very, very quickly. And there's a lot of political pushback against China right now for many reasons. And so again, to be able to say, hey, this is produced in Ethiopia or this is produced in whatever country, it looks better. It's easier than to export to other countries. Even though the owner at the top is the pyramid, right? The ownership at the top of the pyramid is still a Chinese owner.
And
But it
paying tax
looks
to the Chinese government?
often, or in some kind of their private public partnerships kind of stuff. Because they get government money to get started and funded and IP and research on this space. So all that to say, it looks publicly, as far as the customer is concerned, especially, that this is not made in China, still made by the Chinese in the end, right? The ownership of the IP, the intellectual property is Chinese.
Registered only in China or registered in multiple countries?
It depends, it really depends. But they're smart about it, right? So this is what's happening right now on a global scale. And don't get me started about international payments and all the things that are happening at the central bank level and all those things. Like we're coming into a currency war, right? This is what's happening right now. So it's going to be a very interesting world in the next 5 to 10 years. So what does that mean for you? Keep your eyes open. Understand, what are you looking to produce? What are you looking to source? What are the opportunities for you, right? I would not only be focused on China. So this is a quick US map. Again, I just want you to really understand that even if you look at the US, I know this is not relevant for you, but understand that different parts of the US focus on different things, right? From agriculture to cattle, to chemicals, to drugs manufacturing, all those things. It's the same thing with China and other countries. So even in India, for example, there's regions focused on different things, right? So if you're just looking online and hey, you Google it and you find the first factory and you contact that factory, you're leaving money on the table. It's because they're probably just using good SEO and good marketing and good advertising in order for you to find them. But it's probably not the right factory or supplier for you to deal with. So do your research is what I'm trying to say here.
So people who we want to contact are they could be on the Google, but they will not be on the first pages.
A real Chinese, let's go back to China, a real Chinese factory, 99.999% of their staff speaks zero English. The factory owner speaks zero English. So how are you supposed to find them, right? So they employ armies of trading companies who refer business to them and they profit share. I'll talk about that in a few slides. So what is importing? Well, it's common sense, right? Importing involves bringing a product and or service into a country for sale that has been made somewhere else. What are the top 3 regions from which Canada imports from outside into Canada? What are the 3 you think?
China, States.
Excuse me?
If you are talking about region, that we knew China and for Eastern Asia, Europe and.
Well, there's countries here, right? So which 3 countries you think?
Countries.
So we have to rank
China,
them.
USA.
Just tell me what you think.
China and then United States, maybe United States come first, I don't. China, United States,
And number 3,
Germany,
Germany. Yes.
Mexico.
For me, first United States, second China, and third Germany.
I agree with him, but prefer Mexico.
Okay,
Yeah, I would also say
Yeah,
Mexico,
maybe.
so China, United States and Mexico.
all right.
And then
No,
boom,
United States.
Vietnam, India and Australia.
United States.
You're talking about value, right? Here, not volume.
Dollar
Yeah,
value, yeah.
Dollar money.
Yeah.
United States.
What about you, Fahim?
United States one.
Okay,
Let us see.
Maybe then
Because
Mexico.
stuff
and
coming
China.
from, some of.
you're muted, Fahim. Which one do you think, the three?
More expensive.
Well, I believe Germany, India, and Italy.
Interesting. No China.
Oh, yes, I forgot China. Of course, the entire market is with.
All
I
right,
think United States, Mexico, and then China.
so it is China, US, and Mexico. Now, the question is this the right order?
No,
I think so.
United States.
because most of the products which is coming
United
from
States,
China
China.
is actually coming from US.
Same.
Okay. US, China, Mexico.
US, Mexico, and China.
And what if Mexico is the first one? That would be a surprise. eh?
So China's at 13%,
Oh, no.
51% and 6%.
Oh,
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, but it's still coming to the United States first from where? From China. So I believe the taxes are gonna be lower if you were just importing that to the United States first and then cross the border with
It's-
Canada.
It could be import and re-export in terms of like goods and being part of the supply chain. Some stuff might be coming in, being assembled, going back to the United States to create value.
Some of that is true, but most of it is because the big importers and distributors are in the US.
Mhm.
Right? And so they get quantity discounts essentially, right? They're buying huge quantities from Chinese factories, they bring to the US, and then they export it to Canada. And so Canadian distributors don't have the purchasing power that Americans do. Because they have a huge population to support, right? The US does. And so it's often cheaper to buy it in US than to buy it locally in Canada, even though it's still coming from China.
How much is the EU in total? EU.
I'd have to look. It's not big. For Canada, very small. Very small. Yeah. So exporting, meaning out of Canada, somewhere else, US is 75%, right? So we send a lot of natural resources and unfinished goods or semi-finished goods to the US. China is only 5%. China needs a little from us, right? Some minerals and a few things, but wood, paper,
That's why.
aluminum.
That's why the American dislike relation, trade relation with Canada, it's not fair. We are buying 51 while we are selling 75. It is unbalanced.
We-
Canada and US, the exchange.
But if you look at the next chart, like we buy,
51%.
right, but it's still a lot, right?
I don't know which one, but I thought it.
Right.
We,
It's political fighting, right? And
Sure.
so governments use trade, trade fights essentially, to settle scores, I think. So like the wood industry and things like that, right? That's been going on for years and years and years. Milk, there's milk cartels, there are cheese cartels, there's maple syrup cartels. So there's a few things we control, but in fact, Americans are dumping. I forget the exact number, but it's huge, like last week, huge amounts of milk into the sewer, directly into the sewer. They'd rather dump it than sell it at a loss, which is stupid. Like give it to the poor, make milk powder and like do something, right? Like there's so much waste and it's a political fight. It's truly a political fight. Wisconsin, for example, like it makes enough milk to support like half the world. It's insane.
yeah,
So
I saw on video they are draining the milk
straight to
to the
the,
sewage
yeah.
system,
Yeah.
rather than sell it.
yeah.
That's a climate disaster.
Yes, it
climatic
is.
Disaster.
Yeah.
Because that milk is not, is produced by cows.
And forgetting climate for a second, just how many people could you feed with this, right? Like into secondary products and like protein shakes and protein stuff and like it's a protein. Like instead of just putting it in a sewer, you could have done something with that. Like,
So
it's-
dumping as in dumping like is forbidden by law. Dumping it means like you reduce the price and you sell at a loss to.
Yeah.
But this kind of dumping is.
It should be illegal, but it's not.
It's not, right?
No,
But this is the real dumping.
yes,
Okay,
they would rather dump it in a sewer.
Yeah.
Than give it away to poor countries or do something with it.
well, the logistics will be sophisticated unless it's dehydrated.
Which is easily done. Right? How many people on food stamp and government assistance and all those things that could use milk products? How expensive is baby powder for parents? You know, like this, anyway, that could be a long conversation, but it's political fighting, it's all it is, right? And unions protecting their turf and it's political.
And economic perhaps.
The whole world's about money, right? But yes, but it's also very, very political.
So sorry, ROW, what does it stand for?
Rest of the world.
Oh,
So all that to say, Canada is married to the US in every way. So whatever the US says, Canada often does.
This graph from the point of global economic of Canada. It's really critical to Canada.
Mhm.
Again, on 75% from US, I
Yeah.
think any issue with the economy, US economy, directly will come to Canada quickly.
Canada is all our eggs are in one basket. Right? So to
It's
put,
like the man who stand on one leg.
so the US has a lot of power over us in many ways.
yeah, but it's not on, it's a solid foundation though. Because.
Well, it's an integrated supply chain, right? Like it's
Yeah.
completely,
Ahmed, US economy is the strongest in the world. So, depending
now.
on the, yeah, but, I mean, depending on it, it doesn't, really, it's not a shaky foundation,
Yeah, agreed, but there's no harm if you
of course, diversified.
Mhm.
divest with European.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was surprised with EU, there is not, and in UK, with so much historical relationship, there is no trade. 3%.
what do they have other than financial services? UK has very little though, right? So what can we,
Sell to
So
them.
what can they sell to us? Like we still need the US, right? Like
So what Canada export to US out of the 75%?
natural resources. So aluminum, for example,
Wood and
wood, minerals, gold and like whatever mineral you can think of is going to the US, for example. So natural resources, we even export quite a bit of electricity. Right? We have a surplus of electricity, especially coming from Quebec.
And what is the amount of agricultural and industry in this export?
Oh, it's not broken down, we'd have to search. So this is a website you can go to answer that same question you just asked. So this is Statistics Canada, which is of course a government entity. You can search import, export by industry, by year. So it's a very good website. So I put the link there for you. You'll get a PDF of that with that link. Another website, again from Statistics Canada, different link though. You can search by HS codes. And so that's going to be telling you the trade value, the trade data for importing and exporting. So if you have an HS code you want to check out, for example.
yeah, I actually don't know what more about HS code. What is it?
The harmonized sales code. So it's It's a worldwide code for different product categories.
So is
So
it-
the whole world uses those same codes.
Is it the one which is still under the barcodes?
No, you won't see it that way. You have to search for it.
So eight digits, a number that tells you.
It tells you how it's
much
treated
each
by that country.
custom, is going to cost you, or how it is going, the logistics, does it need special logistics and everything?
Right.
So if I want to see the access code for this thing, like, can I see for any product, like, how would I see?
It's on a website. Search for it.
I have to search it by this product name or?
No, it's a product category. It's not a brand. It's not a company. It's a product category. What does it mean for you?
Search for PET bottles. So if you go to PET bottles, you will search it, you will find it under polyester products, other or whatever.
And different countries deal with stuff differently, and often they have political fights and all those things, and so. So the US has anti-dumping rules, which we just talked about, so like the kid bicycles. Cost nothing to make. Why is it so expensive? Because we have anti-dumping rules, because we don't want. 1 billion of those bikes on the streets that end up in the garbage, and then what do you do with them and all those things, and so clothing, textiles. Also, countries use import duties to protect their own industries. Right, so they have a local industry producing something, they put high taxes on that to try to protect the local businesses. So it's political fighting, it's political maneuvering. Good or bad, it's still maneuvering. So what does it mean for you? You're probably gonna find your product, whatever you're looking to find. There's a very good chance you can find it in the US. Especially if you're looking for a generic product, meaning. So from the last class, we were talking about how I was manufacturing hoverboards, right? Can you find hoverboards in US? Yes. Will it be cheaper than China? No, but it's already imported, it already passed safety checks, it's already certified. It's already in North America, it's a heck of a lot cheaper and easier to organize a pallet from the US to Canada than it is from China, right? So if you're opening a new business, you want to test a product, you want to test an industry, it's a great way to start. So in your case, you want to do some small quantities, for example, right? You want to test different
How do you
products.
find suppliers from these things? Because I know how China works. I have suppliers from China, but I don't know how it works.
I had the same question, sorry, I'm interrupting, and I have one small solution to this as well. So do we need to go to the trade fairs in US to get those
You have to do what?
trade fairs? There are trade fairs in US, like the way it happens in China.
There's some, but like it's resellers, right? Like it's they're not manufacturing any of that stuff in the US,
Okay,
right?
yeah,
So
just to find maybe the manufacturers as well as the resellers, distributors.
there's no manufacturers. Not for this stuff, right? Again, depends on the industry and all those things, but it's people slapping a sticker on the product and saying this, we made this, right?
Because yeah, the simple thing is we want to open some business, maybe online or a physical store.
Mhm.
We need the product.
Yeah.
For that, we need the supplier. So how to reach out to that supplier in US? How do I find the suppliers?
Google's your friend,
So in terms of the states, it's through Google, right?
because that's how they advertise, and
Are there
so
some trade directories or some trade fairs which we can attend, maybe?
they're not manufacturers, they're resellers. So most of them is not gonna spend the time and the energy and the effort to put themselves on those things. Right? They're not true factories in the way you're thinking. They're resellers, they're distributors.
I
So
am-
I would Google, and you keep pushing me in direction of this. Google,
In terms of
Look for-
China, that's Baidu.
Just something came to my mind. The neighboring states of the US to Ontario,
yeah,
is there any kind of like relationship between Ontario and Canadian provinces and things like that? That can be advantageous for us
so
to know?
there is, but they suck.
You mean like trade zones, local trade zones?
I mean, anything, yeah, that's a question I had actually in the previous.
Trade zone, no.
There is no trade zone. between.
but there's the trade commissioner's office
Okay.
that I dealt with even when I was living in Shenzhen in China. They organize trips, they organize events, they help you attend trade shows, they help you get access to distributors and those kind of things. But it's not for startups, it's not for new businesses. You have to have been in business for a while, you need to have revenues and all those things. You need to be big enough to be worth the government's time, right? So I dealt with the embassies in Guangzhou and in like the trade commissioner's office in Shenzhen, and I dealt with the Shanghai office because I wanted to boost my business and get access to others and to get support as a new business in China. And the truth is that they barely gave me the time of day when I first moved to China. After I made my mark and I had my reputation, I was running the factory and I was doing all that. And then they opened like red carpet for me, right? So is there government stuff in China to help you? Yes. When it comes to Canada and US, it's the same thing, right? Trade Commissioner's Office, and you can go to EDC and a bunch of different government entities. But as soon as they find out you're small potatoes, they don't reply you anymore. So is the infrastructure there? Yes. Is it there for us? No. They don't care about us.
But should we know the US market on the states neighboring, is there any advantages of working with the neighboring states? Like considering Ontario not like in the south, but in the north of US, like looking at it from a different perspective.
So it is federal government cannot be any direct relation between state and
Yeah.
province.
That was what something I was.
Politically cannot.
But there's advantages in that sense of managing your supply chain, for example.
Yeah.
So Cornwall being on the New York border and you know, close to Toronto, close to Montreal, close to Ottawa. And so
As logistics.
yeah, so positioning where you want to be depending on what market you want to support, right? So when I first came back to Canada to establish my brand and my factory and all that stuff that we wanted to do for the e-bike stuff in Canada, I spent a few weeks with the mayor of Chatham-Kent, right, which is near Windsor. Because again, it's on the border, all the traffic goes through there. I mean, transportation traffic goes through there and all those things. They have farmland for like stupid cheap and access to old buildings that used to be ketchup factories and stuff, that tomato factories essentially, that we could convert to do assembly. So depending on what you want to do, there's definitely some advantages and government subsidies or advantages that you can take advantage of. And then you can work with the EDC and things like that. So, but you need to be a certain size or a certain phase of your business,
Yeah.
right? Day one, no. But as far as your long-term plan, absolutely.
Thank you.
So in this, this slide, I'm really talking more about sourcing your initial products, your testing product, testing the market, testing the customer. Do they want this? What else do they want? All those things. It's a great way to get started with a small investment and a very, very low risk because you understand everything already, right? So there's some advantages to dealing with a US supplier or reaching out to a US company that's already selling in the US market and say, hey, I want to represent you in Canada, right? I've done that. And I've also gone to US companies and say, hey, I want you to represent me in the US. So it can be both ways. Because again, understand that the average American company makes nothing. They're the same thing as us, right? They go to China.
So what is the outcome? What was the outcome? Are they interested?
Good and bad. So I don't do anything unless I control things. I'm a control freak. Right? I want to control my supply chain. I want to control my product. I want to control all that stuff, right? So I had exclusivity agreements, which I talked about last time. Some of those worked out and some of those were failures because I was not able to get enough volume, enough quantity going to keep my contract. So when you get an exclusivity deal, you have to make promises of the quantity you think you'll be selling per year to maintain that contract.
So you went to US and you talked to those, they must be distributors. They were not manufacturers actually. They were
Well, they had some IP that they owned, so they got it made in China. But they own the designs, they own the patent, they own that stuff, right? So they own the IP.
Yeah, there come my question. How did you find it?
Google.
So Google
Seriously.
is your best friend. That's your answer.
Because they're not gonna be on those websites that you're thinking. Because they're just resellers, they're brands.
I do not have much experience about that, but yes, in some classes over here, they mentioned about some trade directory stores, like some of them are available in the library and some are like what we can
You're
buy.
limiting your,
Like one is Scotch directory. And
Yeah.
to find to resource the distributors and suppliers, just simple thing. I want to sell, I want to open a store, I need some supplier. So I don't know any suppliers in Canada, like, or US.
but you're limiting yourself by doing that. It's a resource. There's nothing wrong with having more resources, right? But again, I would not focus there, truly. Because you're limiting yourself. It could be one of your resources, but don't limit yourself to those resources. Again, the average reseller, even if they're large distributors, they don't, it's not worth their time. Because they already have the brand, they already have the reputation, people come to them. They don't need to pay to list themselves on those things, right? It's like the yellow pages. Can you find somebody in yellow pages or white pages in a phone book?
Yeah.
When's the last time you opened a phone book? Right, that's, nobody cares anymore.
I
Right.
can understand it with relevance to like, I was kind of manufacturing something in India.
Mhm.
And then not the big manufacturers would not, you would not be able to find in the directories and all that. Because they don't need.
They don't need to, yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with researching, there's nothing wrong with doing what you're saying, I'm saying like, don't focus there, right?
So that's the reason, sorry, I'm
Yeah.
interrupting you again. I talked about the trade shows in US.
They don't produce anything. The US does not produce anything, right? They're importing from elsewhere. They own the IP, they develop IP, they develop a mold, they develop a design, but it's made somewhere else.
I'm okay with that, like,
Yeah.
you know what I want to do. I just need.
Yeah.
Like someone is already a distributor, he is buying from China. I cannot buy from China because I don't have the quantities I'm
Yeah.
ready to buy from.
Yeah.
So I just need supplier or distributor,
Yeah.
I don't need a manufacturer.
But again, Google's your best friend, truly. All right, let's keep going. So the issue or the benefit still is that you're gonna get brands, American brands. Again, they don't make it, right? But they visited the factory, they got the orders, they probably went through some growing pains of dealing with many different suppliers until they find the right factory, that gives them quality and the things that they want. So they've done their homework. And so when you're buying a product from a US distributor or a US company, there's some definite advantages there, right? There are some issues. The issue, of course, is that you're stuck with whatever brand they put under, whatever sticker, essentially they put under packaging and on the product. So you're reselling somebody else's stuff. Can you make a deal with them to do OEM or put your own sticker? Maybe if you do big enough quantity. But at that point, why bother? Just go straight to China, right? So use the US to get started. Oh, I want to sell hoverboards. I want to see if I can sell it. Then you find a US supplier that, the hoverboard is already UL 2272 certified and all those things. And so you're saving a lot of headaches, you're lowering your risk. And you get to test. In a new business, all you want to do is test. You're testing your price, you're testing the quality, you're testing the customer demand.
Yeah.
You're testing seasonability, you're testing all these different things. And so it's one less headache for you by getting access to someone who's done at least some homework, hopefully,
Absolutely.
on all those things. They have a lot less choice. So when I was running the factory in China, I was hopeful. I was hopeful that people would want something new, exciting, innovative, better. What I found is that I was wrong. I was really wrong. So we developed the very first worldwide hoverboard that is full aluminum. The full casing is aluminum, not plastic cover. Because kids break it and all those things, and Americans often are on the bigger side, but they're using kid toy and So the aluminum would just fold, right? The platform that people would stand on, for example. And so I thought, hey, why don't we create a premium hoverboard, full aluminum casing, it's gonna last forever, beautiful quality, it looks beautiful design, all that stuff. On paper, that's a great idea. We spent a fair bit of money developing that, and I still have some. Too bad we don't have another class. I could bring one. I have some at home. It's a beautiful product. It didn't sell, at least not as much as I was expecting. Why? Because the buyer that came to my factory, that came to China, essentially, they just wanted cheap crap. Because the customer back home doesn't know the difference. And the customer back home doesn't really care about quality that much. How much does it cost? Because they want
here in Canada.
Canada, US, Europe, yeah, because they just say, well, it's the same quality as others, good enough, how cheap can I get it, right? They don't want a double price product that will last 10 years. They want a good enough product that will last long enough that a kid will be bored with it. That's right.
Since it is past the test, that's enough for them.
Because they're resellers, right? They sell to distributors, they sell to stores, they sell here, they sell that. They want to make quick money. So the mentality of the person coming to China, I'm not saying 100%, but the vast majority that came to China, it's cheap, cheap, cheap. They would fight with me for 50 cents.
All of them, all the.
The vast majority, like over 90% of them.
I'm
for
sorry,
sure.
but you couldn't find a single customer
We said
in the
10%.
whole world that who was like more focused on quality and not the price.
It's price. You go to China, it's price. That's why you go to China. You want price.
Yes, I
Right.
can understand.
So, oh, I can go to Northeast China, and they tell me all the time, like, here's a quotation, and I knew right away, this is subpar quality, and like, I knew right away, right? They don't care, because they just want to sell it for Christmas, make their money. Probably that person that was buying from these factories was trying to make money from this for 3-6 months. And they promise all the warranties in the world. They don't care. They're gonna shut down the business anyways. That's how business works in China. The foreigners, not the Chinese. The foreigners go to China, they make a quick buck, and they move on to what's hot, next. They're not building a hoverboard business. They're building a business that sells hoverboards, as long as hoverboards are popular. Season, right? So they don't care about innovation. Now, on the e-bike, that's a bit different, because most e-bikes are heavy, the batteries honestly suck. 99% are Chinese cells, Chinese batteries. So we spent a lot of time and effort. So we had Sensum cells, we had LG cells, so we had premium batteries, we had a premium frame that's lighter than most aluminum frames for e-bikes. Most e-bikes are motorcycles, like they're super heavy, right? Because that's what's cheap. Steel, not aluminum, and all those things, right? So all that to say, depending on what product you're manufacturing, what is your industry, are you building a long-term business? Most people that came to visit us when they were interested in the e-bikes, they cared more about quality versus the hoverboard. It's just a quick sell, make quick money and quit, do something else. So depending on what industry you're talking about, of course, it matters, right? But all the time, energy, and effort that I put into designing new products when it came to the electric mobility stuff, not the e-bike, but like the electric scooters and those kind of things, it was wasted, truly. We had beautiful premium metallic paints, like way better than what you've seen. Just give me the cheap stuff. That's in my face all day, every day, and I was the only foreigner in my factory. So the foreigners, meaning our buyers, came to the factory, they saw me, they don't want to deal with my staff, they want to deal with me directly, because easy communication, all those things, right? So I had, I'll exaggerate, I had millions of conversations with all these buyers over 5 years, and all about price, truly.
So how do the factories over there work? Like, do they wait the customers to come to them, or
I'll get into
Do
that.
they also-
I'll get into that in coming slides. I'll talk about sales and all that stuff. So understand that, so to go back to the US, you're gonna be stuck with whatever that buyer decided to import. And that buyer already has potential resellers. And those resellers just care about margins. Again, not quality. Nobody wants junk, but nobody wants the most expensive stuff either, even though you can have something way more innovative or better. So the average product we're seeing in Canada and US is super boring, super boring. Because the buyer decides what they bring to Canada and US. So you've been to Shenzhen, so you go to Huaqiang Bay, for example, which is a wholesale area for all the high-tech cool stuff.
Well, when was the last time you've been to Huaqiang?
Oh,
2016?
no, a few years after that, but it changed.
Yeah, it has
it
changed. 2022, that was crazy.
So you could see things in Huaqiang Bay that you'll never see in Canada and US ever, right?
I came here last year to Canada, man, you're still using checks. You're still using checks here, while there, WeChat is my best friend.
Yep,
That's a social network in China that you're using, use it for everything.
it's a million
There's
times better than WhatsApp.
No bills, no checks, you don't have cash, I've never had, since 2014, I've never had cash on me.
Yep.
The only problem that I encounter when the phone dies, that's it. Your phone died, you can do nothing, you're just stuck somewhere until you get a battery, then you get some power and then, yeah.
And
You're not
China
Chinese.
launched,
You're not China, I'm saying,
Yeah.
I'm asking. But you're operating in China right now?
No, I live here in Canada. I moved to Canada from China.
Okay.
and they launched their CBDC, right, their central bank digital currency. And it's gonna work with no internet. They won't even be connected, it's gonna have the near frequency, so like phone to phone, all that stuff, like it's already happening. Like China's gonna be the first country in the world that's gonna be totally cashless. So yeah, so go to the US, look at distributors, look at what they have. It won't be the most innovative, it won't be the most sexy, the most exciting, but it's a great way to test your market. Once you know that somebody wants it, then you can go to China and test different stuff and put your sticker on it, essentially, right, with your brand, and start building your brand. So when you think about building your brand, I would do a dual brand. Meaning you can represent someone that gives you access to supply, support, right? All the things that go with buying from someone else. And then over time, you can build your real brand, which can be sold with the other brand, assuming it's a good distributor or a good, company that you want to continue working with. And so now you can create a premium brand in the same product category, right? So now you can go after the innovative stuff, the exciting stuff, and that gives you a backup. At least now you have access to someone who has big inventory and spare parts and all the things that become headaches in the future. You want to do your own brand, right? And that's why you can focus on the super high quality, high tech stuff, if that's what you're interested. So all that to say, at least take a look at the US. You really want to. As a starting point, unless you got stupid money in the bank and you say, Pierre, I just want to go straight to the source. I want to go straight to the factory. But that's not the right way to do business. You want to test. So even if you insist, I'm going to go to China anyways, then do pallets. You should not be doing containers until you've proven your market and all those things, right? Even if you make less money. The point at first of your business is not to make money. It's to validate your idea, validate the business, validate that everything is being done right and prepared right. Now you go back to China and now you buy in quantities and all that stuff.
Can I ask you
Yeah.
something? Like brand wise?
Yeah.
Is it easy to bring brands from China to import brands to Canada? I mean, okay, let's
Can
say,
you rephrase that?
I want to bring a whole container of Nike shoes.
Good luck. Because you're gonna need to prove that you have the legal right to represent Nike in Canada. So the answer is no,
Okay,
unless you have a deal as a representative or something from Nike directly.
so basically we're now talking about some known names with some average quality that nobody knows in Canada that we can bring.
It could be a well-established American brand, for example, in the US. That's manufactured in China, right? We understand that, but you could represent a US brand in Canada, for example. As long as you have the deal and the paperwork, then you're fine. But a big brand like Nike or some sports brand or something like that, you better have all your I's dotted because the border is going to check all this stuff. And there's a lot of fake paperwork and fake deals.
Will be duplicated. So
The
my
border is
understand-
super picky about copies.
So on this subject, and my understanding, just tell me this right, there are two types of merchant agency. Either he is agent or he is distributor.
Mhm.
So in both cases, you have to make a legal contract. with
Yes.
The owner of that lot.
Yes,
So you make.
Not with the factory.
distributor or
with the brand owner.
owner of the.
Right. So when I came back to Canada, we made our own hoverboards, our own e-bikes and stuff. But I also sourced other products from other factories that I put together in my containers with my own goods from my factory, right? So I did a drone that follows a watch, a smartwatch. And so you don't control it, it just follows the watch and you push buttons, but there's no controller. It's for people who do sports and golfing, they want to film themselves and that kind of stuff. Great idea, bad execution, it had issues. And then the regulations, right when I brought it, all the regulations in Canada about drones was like becoming super strict and you need licensing for that. And anyway, so that was a waste of money, but it was a great experience. So I had an exclusive deal with, it's called FlyPro. And so it's a Chinese brand. And so I had exclusivity for all of Canada with this company. I also represented electric boat motor company in Shenzhen, which is really owned by the Hong Kong University. So all the IP development, all that stuff was actually done at the university. And so I represented them in Canada exclusively, and that did really well. So I had all these deals. The problem is that my profit margins were too small to do any kind of distribution to resellers. Right? So typically you need to have, 3-4 levels deep, right? Because everybody needs to make money to represent you and, do support and all those things. And so their model on the China side was just too lean to be worth my time. I would have had to focus just on that one business, right? And that was not my intention. I wanted to basically create a franchise model that you would have all the electric mobility under one roof. That's what I was trying to create. And that's why I came back to Canada. I want to have one store, think Best Buy or something, but nothing but electric mobility. From e-bike to scooters to hoverboards to you name it. That doesn't exist, right? Even today, it doesn't exist. So that was my intent. And
That's
so
a good idea.
it's a good idea, but it's hard to execute unless you have super deep pockets. And so that was my business plan and all my stuff, right? And that's why I spent over a year just on that plan, right? And I did that with the factory owners. We agreed we were going to set up a company in Canada and use this as distribution and eventually, do the final assembly in Canada. So we can say it's assembled in Canada, then we can export to US and all those things, right? And in the end, the factory was struggling because Europe was going down and many reasons. And so they just cared, what is the quantity can you sell in Canada? They didn't care about profit. They just wanted to keep the factory going, right? Which you can understand, but it's not good for my business here in Canada, right? And so that's why I ended up quitting. Like I just shut down the business.
Maybe it's because you didn't go into the US.
We did,
Oh, you did.
but it's a very, very lean business, right? And they were not willing to support the expansion. Anyway, it's a long story, but as a business, it was a good business. But you need very deep pocket to support it and set up the infrastructure and the customer support and repair and who's going to repair it and how you do repair centers and like you needed, I needed more time and more money to do it right. I didn't want to do it the fast way. I wanted to do it the right way,
48 hours per 24.
What was that?
You needed 48 hours instead of 24.
Exactly. So all that to say, there's advantages to finding a local source that you can test your market with. This is not your final product. This is not the final brand. The profit's gonna suck. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. We're testing, right? So look into the US is what I'm trying to say here. Okay, sourcing from China. Do we need a break? Are we on time? A little bit more, or you want to take a break?
So let us talk about this project which we shut down. Now, I think the runaway rate is high Your business profile. Study.
It was actually decent. It was okay,
So.
yeah.
Because I'm thinking.
Because the hard labor was done in China, because I had the engineers in China, the factory, all that
Yeah,
stuff, right?
that-
So all-
Selling here in the metals.
that was easy. I did it myself often. Because you're replacing components, you're not doing repair, right? Like in the way that you're thinking, right? Here, if the motor's dead, I'm replacing the motor and it's all removable parts, right? Like it's modular. And so it's not that hard to replace. I'm not an engineer and I was doing it. So the issue was more, again, supply chain and managing, you know, if we sold an e-bike in Vancouver, because I sold well over 50% of my sales online were in Alberta and BC. So are you gonna ask a guy to ship me his e-bike from Vancouver back to Ottawa? It doesn't make sense, right? So you want to establish partnerships with local bicycle stores or e-bike stores and you know, referrals and fees and all that stuff. And that takes time to establish. And like I was telling him before you guys arrived, the issue often with a factory is that there's no manual in the sense of connect this wire to that wire, and there's no blueprint per se. And even when it came to batteries or motherboards, right, to see the cards, maybe this manufacturer has a blue card and the other manufacturer has a red card. Like it's whatever they had on hand, whatever they wanted to do. There's no rhyme or reason sometimes why they use this color wiring and so a proper engineer, electrical engineer that looks at this like, what the heck, right? Doesn't make sense to them. And so if you want to establish a proper brand, which is what I wanted to do, we would have to standardize a lot of things, right? So it's a big job. There's no e-bike company in Canada, even today, that's done it right. They suck. They suck bad, not being polite. They suck. Customer support sucks. The repair stuff sucks. The number of parts that I have on hand is nil because they're afraid to keep too much money in inventory, especially knowing that on the China side, they might change the component completely. And now you're stuck with this inventory that you can't use anymore, right? So they're not completely wrong, but you know what I mean? So there's many challenges.
They want to go very lean with it.
Right? So again, if you're looking to establish a brand from nothing that you want to be proud of, you want to build a proper business around, not just make quick money, but like a proper business, you have so many things to think about and plan for. It's not just about finding the right factory to source from, right? That's just step one.
So having a strategy based around quality is very expensive. This is what I'm.
Yes. Yeah, but it's necessary unless you just want to make quick money, right? But the average factory in China, again, is not a factory. It's an assembly line. So when we got into the hoverboard craze, which was like 2015, around there, it was the hottest Christmas product worldwide, right? We made stupid money from hoverboards. That paid for the expansion of our factory. And so you had DVD makers, like DVD player makers and TV makers. You had like people in a completely different industry jumping on a bandwagon to make hoverboards. Why not? They can Baidu, they can Google who makes motors and who makes this and who makes that, and everybody talks to each other, all the factory owners. It's not like here, like we don't even know our neighbor in Canada, right? But in China, all the factory owners, they talk, and like all supply chain is very integrated. And so it's stupid easy for a Chinese person to find a component or a part, right? So you had completely unrelated factories or assembly lines making something completely different, jumping into the next game. My partner, which was a factory.
Communication. Because of this healthy communication, new ideas will be born and we will divert you.
They just copy each other.
Right.
And then in 3 months, when something else is hot, they stop this completely and they move on to something else, right? So they don't care. They'll promise you a 100-year warranty. I don't care. What are you gonna do? Hire a Chinese lawyer to come after me? Good luck, right? And so they promise whatever, especially if it's not a factory that's been around for a long time, right? So there's a lot of mom and pop factories. Most factories in China are mom and pop factories. And they're just jumping to the next thing. And so, yes, can you find somebody cheaper? Absolutely. And you get what you pay for. Right? So be extremely careful when you're dealing with a factory, not just China, with any factory. If you're just basing yourself on price, you're gonna get exactly what you pay for, which is gonna be junk.
Now, from this lecture which you gave us last week's. So your activity in China, USA, and all these people, you're in China, Chinese factory. You have relation in different part of the world because you are doing international.
Mhm.
So at that point, you remember which area you are selling more than another? Or
For my products,
Yes, your product.
France was huge for me. Brazil, US, of course, Australia, Poland, because Poland was used as a base to export to other parts of Europe. Russia a fair bit. Who else?
But during that period, you didn't follow up these countries and try to establish there and to increase your distribution.
We did.
Just you are waiting them.
No, we did attended trade shows across the world. We did all sorts of stuff.
But now you are focusing on Canadian and USA market for different business.
I'm completely out of this business now. I have a new business. Yeah. So we had exclusive representatives in different countries because we established our own brand, right? So we did OEM, meaning we'll put whatever sticker you want on the product. That's OEM. But we also had our own brand that we started to establish. So we're in Amsterdam now. We're in different places. We meaning the factory, not the Canada business that has started. But it's challenging. And so now my factory that I used to work for, now they're pretty much all in on Poland. The US market is saturated. Every Chinese owner wants to go to US. It's like the default place you want to be. And so the US is so saturated. And Amazon and everybody else is going to the factories directly, like I said earlier. And so the US market, unless you're super unique or super powerful and super deep pockets, it's not worth it right now, unless you're a huge brand. So Europe right now is a place to be, especially when it comes to electric mobility stuff. More green and all those things.
Yeah. Anything that is manufacturing and you don't have a strategy around price, your price is. So what I understand from like your many days of discussion is that quality is not a very good strategy unless you're innovative and you're ahead of the market and you have a brand or something. And otherwise you will go down.
Quality is don't get me wrong, quality is extremely important.
Yeah.
And I told you, I established a new line of quality assurance, right, that they were fighting with, but that's an internal thing.
That's
doesn't
what
need
I
that.
understood, that you are very concerned with quality.
Yes.
Personally.
Yes.
Personally.
You have to be. If you're building a proper company, you have to be.
Yeah.
For long term.
But the customer here doesn't want that. He wants the price.
That's number one. Okay, quality with great price is better than a high price with a great quality.
So obsession with quality is going to kill you.
If you're factory,
Anything. You can be a reseller and it can kill you.
well, it depends, because if you're a reseller, the stores, the retail stores, like the local, they need to depend on you. They need you, so it's different, right? So if you're talking wholesale versus retail is very, very different. Then it's the opposite almost. You can charge more for a high quality product, for example, on the retail side, but you cannot as a factory. Right? So I'll give you an example. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so for example, there was a very big bicycle in California, bicycle franchise. They have 3 locations. All the A-list artists, like the A-listers, the famous people, they all go there, right? Like it's a high-end, very high-end bicycle store. And they wanted to work with me to put they wanted me to design essentially things for them that they would rebrand. The issue is that the way that they work is they work very, very leanly, right? Because what happens now is stores want to lower the risk. In the old days, they would buy a container from you, let's say, and they would sit on inventory and hope to sell it, right? Like Costco style of doing business. The new way of doing business now is that if they're gonna represent you, they're putting the pressure on you as a distributor. I will put, so what they wanted to do with me is they wanted me to put 1 or 2 of each model in their store. So they might have 10, 12 different e-bikes or scooters or whatever in their store from me. But I need to have the quantity on hand and the spare parts and everything to support that store on hand, local in the same city. They would not even accept me being in the same state. Because when their customer wants something repaired, or when they want to order, they want same day, because now we're so spoiled, Americans even more, you know, Amazon Prime and all that stuff. I want it now. What do you mean tomorrow? No, now, I bought it now, I paid you now, I want it now, right? So the customer demand is so much now that to protect their brand and their company, they need to guarantee to the customer they'll have it by tomorrow or whatever. So if you're manufacturing in China, let's say, and you bring containers to Canada, US, whatever, when you want to do deals with existing businesses that can resell for you, this is their expectation. How fast can you support me? What is the turnaround on repairs and service and all those things? Because it's their brand on the line, and they're the ones that are customer facing, retail customer facing, right?
Yeah.
So it's very high pressure on you. And your margins as a manufacturer or
Going to disappear.
wholesaler, whatever you want to say, is super high, and your margins are fairly small. You need big quantities of sales.
Your risk is also.
Yes, yeah. And nobody wants to do pre-orders anymore, like big quantity stuff. They want to order the minimum amount with the guarantee that they have access to what they need when the customer buys.
So this is what they say lean management.
Yeah.
Go lean.
This is the current world that we're in now. And the customer demand is only becoming higher and higher, right? Like more demanding. So for that store, quality is number one, no matter what, because it's their reputation on the line when somebody buys something that breaks. The customer won't be pissed off at you. They're gonna be pissed off at that store who sold them that product. Right? So the store, the physical store, let's say, as long as they're making about 40% profit margin, they're happy. On the e-bike, for example, that's pretty much 35-40% is the standard for a store. So as long as they're making their 40%, even if the price is higher, they might accept that, as long as they feel confident that it's good quality, you have the spare parts, you can support them, you have all the services that go with that. That to them is more important than the final price. I'm not saying price is not important, but support and quality is for them number one. So it depends on what side that you're talking about. With the person visiting me in China, nothing but price. So what side do you want to be on? There's challenges either way, right? They're just different challenges. You're welcome. Hi, Faber.
Hi, Per.
How are you?
Very well.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed the better part of your class.
You did. You will get the PDF though.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. So what are my sourcing options? Again, I'm just helping you think through this, right? What is my business model? What am I establishing? What are the things I want to think about or I have to think about? This should all be part of your plan. So phase one is getting some samples and testing the market and testing your pricing, start establishing your branding strategy, for example, all those things, right? And at what point is it worth your time and your money to go to China or to go to the source country, I should say, where now you can buy big quantities at a better margin, right? Don't try to make profit at first. That's not your purpose. Your purpose is to prove your business model, right? So what are your sourcing options? Google's your friend. But more than that, when it comes to Asia, you're gonna see there's a few platforms that I'll be talking to you about. There's also sourcing agents, so finding a company, a reputable company in China, for example, that can represent you. That is worth its weight in gold. I didn't trust them when I first moved to China.
So-
Chinese will protect Chinese is what I was thinking. I was wrong. They truly fight for you.
Can we like move the discussion like towards US more than China, like finding sourcing agents in US maybe? Because
Google
we are
it.
small people.
I'm not gonna do your work for you. Google it, okay? What I'm telling you is that they don't make anything. And so then it becomes, who's a distributor? So find an established company. Go Amazon, go somewhere, find who's selling what. Go to a store online, for example. Who's the reseller for that store? That's not hard to find out, right? So work backwards from there.
So you
Yeah.
said 40% is how much this, 35 to 40% is how much the stores would want as margin, but online stores is around 10%, right?
It truly depends on the industry and everything else, right? But if you control the whole thing
Okay.
and you're not giving cuts to anyone, then you can survive on less, but when it comes to online selling, which is a discussion for a little bit later, but when it comes to online selling, the cost, the CAC, CAQ, or CAC, sorry, the cost of customer to acquire a customer is very, very high. Social media marketing is super high, very, very expensive. Right, excuse me, if you look at Google AdWords and all those things, when it comes to acquire a customer, you could be talking about anywhere to late teens to $30-something plus to acquire customers sometimes, depending on the product and all those things. So if your margin is not high enough, it's just not worth it. So then you have to start thinking, okay, you might even lose money on a sell. So the next thing you need to start thinking about is, what is my LTV? What is the lifetime value of that customer? Meaning, how many times will he or she order from me? What is the total value? So that even if I lost money on that first sale, maybe they're testing me as a company, they're testing my product, right? It's a small order, for example. But they might come back to me or refer business to me. And so in the end, I'm making more money than the cost to acquire that customer. So when you get a customer, you want to hold on to the customer for dear life, right? That customer is gold. Because it's a lot cheaper to reacquire that customer, to resell to them, or to upsell to them, than it is to acquire a new customer. That's the most expensive, right? So as part of your strategy, you have to think, how do I make this person come back to me? How do I continue providing value to this person? How do I create a referral system or referral bonus, some way for them to make money, to help me do marketing, for example, which is what my platform is doing through Bitcoin. So what are you doing to make people excited and talk about you and refer to you, those things, right? So it's not about just selling the product. It has to be part of your strategy. What is your customer acquisition strategy? Right? Maybe you're doing free education or free services or consultations, or again, it depends on the business, right? But like, what are you doing that gives them
A good customer experience.
and a reason to come back to you?
And like, you want to put into that customer mind that a kind of mentality.
Yeah.
That if I need to buy this thing, I only have to go to this place.
I'll
I
call
don't-
Pierre and he'll answer any question I have, right? And the next time you want something, who are you gonna call? You can call Pierre, right? So you're establishing your presence and your trust.
Yeah.
And trust is extremely important, right?
That's it.
90+% of people, I forget the exact number, but it's like 90+% of people who buy something, it's on referral. Or at least based on reviews, right? People research before they do something. So creating a good customer experience and a reason for people to come back to you and a reason for people to trust you is incredibly important. Unless you're just selling t-shirts on Amazon, who cares? Then it's about price, right? But if you're building a business, it's all about trust and creating that relationship. My e-bikes were not cheap. My quality, you cannot beat me, honest. But I was not the cheapest. I was not trying to be the cheapest. Right? So that was my brand positioning. You want a cheap crap? Go on Amazon. You want the good stuff that's gonna last you forever. We're gonna hold your hand. We're gonna, store your e-bike in our basement in winter, all that stuff, like full white glove service. That was us. Right? Local repair center right here in Ottawa, all that stuff, right? That was our positioning. We're the factory and we're repairing it locally, right? That was a big marketing like power. So what is your positioning? What are you offering besides cheap price? You cannot win on price. You don't want to win on price because there's always somebody cheaper. Now what? You just lost that customer. You don't want the customer, the type of customer that just cares about price. You want them to care about value. I'm not saying be the most expensive. That's not what I'm saying, but provide more value. So that they
Value
attach
and-
the price to value, right?
Yeah, price and the value, so like
Value is so
both
important.
sides.
Right? Okay, so online sourcing agents, really important. If you're going to do a long-term business in Asia, find a sourcing agent. Find someone who can represent you, visit the factory, be there at the factory during production. That's going to save you potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've seen factories making spelling mistakes on t-shirts. They don't read English, they don't care. They're paid 2,000 RMB per month to make that t-shirt for you. You think they care? They don't care. 99.9% of factory workers don't speak one word of English. They would not even know that there's a spelling mistake, right? That happens. So now, if you don't have somebody represent you at the factory during production, you receive your 20-foot container of t-shirts. Now what? How are you supposed to sell a t-shirt with a spelling mistake?
But isn't it the responsibility of the owner of that factory?
How are you going to fight them? You're going to spend more money on lawyers than you'll ever get back from them.
But you don't just pay them.
You have to pay them before you get the goods.
Can't we say that?
No,
Why?
there's
I
no
don't-
factory that will deal with you, ever. No,
You clearly have never been to China, right?
no,
You've never
I've been to India, like,
No.
if I made order for someone and if I spoil their product, they say that I didn't pay you for this thing. I paid
you
you for
pay
that.
50% deposit.
That's it.
They take money out of their pocket to start production. Like my e-bikes and scooters and stuff, like let's say the hoverboards, like I told you last time, our average, depending on the model and stuff, we made 12 to 15% profit margin on a hoverboard, right? So when you order the hoverboard from us, like let's say a 20-foot container, which is like 650 hoverboards, that means we're dipping into our own pocket to manufacture for you. We're, as a factory, taking a risk. What if you run out of money or you don't want to pay or something happens? So the factory takes a risk right away, right? And then we produce for you, and then we say, okay, your goods are ready, your 20-foot container is ready, we'll send you a couple pictures, this is your container, give me the balance. But the goods are not leaving my factory until you pay me fully. There's no but. Unless you do a letter credit, only the huge factories will do that. Your typical e-bike hoverboard factory, they will never do a letter credit, for example. So now what? You need someone to represent you. Long-term, like maybe not for a pallet or two or something, you take a risk, but like long-term business, you absolutely want someone to represent you. Absolutely. $100-something a day for somebody to be there, to be your eyes, to take video, to take pictures, to fight with the factory right there with the team that's producing. I would pay almost anything for that. Right? I told you last time, we had a huge Korean buyer. He was buying container after container after container of hoverboards. And he had a Chinese guy, mid-20s probably. He was awesome. I hated him. He was such a pain in my butt. But that's his job, to be a pain in my butt, right? He was opening all the boxes and checking everything out, and that was his job. That's what he was paid for. As a factory, I hated him, but I respected him because he did a really, really, really good job, right?
He was in a way saving you as well, because you
Potentially.
don't want to get.
But it was a
into
Christmas
risky-
season. We just want to get the crap out, right? We just want to produce. But my point is that someone like him is worth whatever you pay him, right? So do you need him today? Probably not. But you might need someone like him in the future, right? So I'm just helping you think like the things you're going to want to think about. Not just day one, but like for the life of your business, right? Let's take a break. We're talking a lot, which is awesome, but I'm I'm gonna have to catch up on the slides. You want to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, we will take a break.
We'll take a break, I will have to leave this item.
Oh,
Yeah, can I later get the,
Yeah, I'll send a PDF and the recording to everybody.
do you guys need a break or you want to keep going?
I actually saw the previous signal as a break, so I took my break.
can I ask us?
Yeah.
Your personal thoughts on why is Xiaomi not making? Xiaomi brand, because it's an incredible brand, it's very nice
My
price.
wife's X phone was a Xiaomi phone. The support is not there for one.
Okay,
There's so much pushback right now on Chinese brands and Chinese product. Oppo was decent too, and you don't see it anywhere,
I would not respect them.
but it's a big company and a big,
Yeah.
right?
In China, yeah, but
So they're big in Europe, they're big in, parts of Asia, for example. So again, it depends, but honestly, people don't want Chinese stuff. And this is a fight I had with my Chinese factory partners all the time. Because they want to put stickers of made in China everywhere. And I kept telling them, don't take this wrong, but I kept saying like, the foreigners don't want anything related to China. We don't even want to know what's made in China.
but that's 90% of whatever is
I
manufactured.
know, but we don't want to see it. That's like when you eat a burger, you don't want to think about the cow, right? You just want to eat the burger. We don't want to see meat as meat, right? Like, we don't want our meat to look like meat. We don't want our meat to look like the animal that it came from. It's the same thing with products made in China. In the back of your brain, you know it's probably made in China, but you don't want to be reminded of it, right? So a Chinese brand would make it, it would be very, very hard to penetrate a market like here, really, unless you're going after people with less money and things like that. But then you can finance your phone through the phone company, and there's no incentive for the phone companies to not partner with Apple and Samsung and those kind of companies and provide some kind of incentive with Xiaomi or Oppo or somebody like that. So
So there's not like a political game to not let another Chinese brand on the huge market. Well, North America.
we don't see Apple as a Chinese brand, even though it pretty much
No, I
is,
mean,
right?
Xiaomi, I mean,
I know, that's what I'm saying. So even though the iPhone is still made through Foxconn, which is more or less China, Taiwan, and a few other locations, for example, the IP is California, but the phone is totally Chinese, right? So, but it's a perception of Apple being an American company. And when you buy something that's expensive, it's all about perception, right? It's about face, it's about look at me, what I have, and that kind of stuff. BYD is an amazing electric car.
that was my next question,
So-
how I can bring it to Canada.
But you're gonna be hard pressed to find any American or Canadian willing to buy a BYD car.
Oh, I
Just-
want it. They
But
have some,
you don't,
some brand new 2023 models, they're incredible.
but you don't
They're
represent
much
the
better
average
than
Canadian,
Tesla.
right? Like, so. Because it's perception again. I don't want some China crap. I want Tesla, right? So, and that's why. Or just seeing something China, people already, that's just automatic. And it's getting worse because the political side of China right now is, on the side of Russia and all those things, and because we're entering the next phase of the Cold War, I truly believe so.
Yep.
And that Cold War involves China, 100%. And I'm not anti-China, like, again, my family, my wife is Chinese, all that stuff. I don't want to sound anti-China, but I'm anti-China on a political side and the positioning and that kind of stuff. And it's gonna be really interesting. You're gonna see way more pushback than you realize, I think. And the whole BRICS, the money, again, all those things, like it's East versus West all over again. So Chinese products are gonna have a very, very hard time in the Western world. And so even the Canadian government now, so I'm part of two Indian community groups here in Ottawa.
Is China east of Canada or is it west of Canada?
Depends who you ask, right? For me, it's closer to the west side, but what I'm trying to say is that the world is really, really changing and you have political alliances and it's very, very, very political. But you're gonna see Canada becoming much, much closer to India in the coming years. This is already happening. We had Canadian parliamentary people even late last year. I was part of an event again, and they were talking about all the trade stuff that's happening with India. So Canada is becoming extremely close to India now, more than people realize. And they're replacing all the international students from China basically with India and all those things. And so you're going to see that side coming as well. I would not want to invest in a China brand. I think it's going to be a tough business.
Sorry, I've got to go.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I do appreciate this time. It was very interesting and
The interesting part was just coming up. in
I
fact.
know
Yeah.
that. That's why I'm like, oh, people asking questions, stop asking questions. Come on, let's go to the most important. Yeah, so if I could get the copy of
Yeah.
but we didn't know your agenda. We didn't know your agenda. Oh, no, it's so good. I'm not pushing. I'm not like, I respect others.
You can email me as well and we can discuss.
I appreciate it.
the
Yeah,
questions.
thank you. Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you wouldn't mind just responding to the email from Sarah, she sent it to you again.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Will do.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Yes.
All right, so I'll go quickly to make sure we're on time. Like I said, I tend to overtalk because I get excited about this stuff. So where do I source? There's three main options. There's more, but three that I feel are respectable that you could more or less trust. Of course, you always have to protect yourself, but Alibaba is by far the best one for China. There's also AliExpress, which is also owned, of course, by Alibaba. So the difference is that Alibaba is really meant for wholesale. The factories you find on Alibaba, their expectation is you're buying at least a 20-foot container. It's often not the case. People get pallets and they get samples, but they feel it's a waste of time for them because as a factory, like I said, like if they're making, let's say 15% profit, do they really want to sell you a couple pallets? They're hoping you're going to buy more in the future. That's the only reason they reply to your email, because those couple pallets, even though it's big money to you, it's lunch for them, right? Like it's nothing. It doesn't keep the factory going, right? If you plan to do big business long-term, Alibaba is the place to be. And it's at least a way to check out who's the supplier, how long have they been in business, what is their trade volume monthly. This is all public through the Alibaba platform. It gets reported by Alibaba itself because they want people to trust them. Alibaba is on your side. Alibaba is like Amazon in the sense that Amazon protects the buyers, not the sellers. Alibaba protects the buyers, not the seller. If you fight with a supplier on Alibaba, rightly, like if something really happened, Alibaba more likely will be on your side. Because they want you to come back. They want to keep their reputation, right? You need to negotiate. The price that you see on Alibaba is complete BS. It's a made up BS, okay? It's a made up number because people search by what? They search by price. So they have to put a low price. That's the nature of the game. It's a game, right? So they might say, oh, the price doesn't include the battery. It doesn't include this, it doesn't include that. That happens all the time. So read the fine print and talk to them and don't assume that it comes with all four tires on the car, right? Does it really come with all four tires? Put in writing. I exaggerate, but not by much, okay? So, because they have to do that. Otherwise, nobody's gonna find them, nobody's gonna contact them. So you have to be ready and willing to negotiate. Don't tell them it's the first time you're buying from there. Don't tell them you've never been to China. Don't give them power. Don't lie, but don't give them power either. Yes, Favor?
Okay, so what you're saying is buying from Alibaba makes sense when you are doing you earlier have said that there are shops that we can do minimum purchase. Were you referring to Alibaba site?
You can even buy just one unit from Alibaba, but you still have to take the time to build a relationship with the factory. You It's not like buying from Amazon, right? You're building a relationship with this seller. You're hoping to get a good price. You're hoping to get good service. You're hoping that you can keep using them year after year, right? If you're building a proper business. So now's not the time to be a jerk or be aggressive. You have to be strong in your negotiating, but in a good, positive, respectful way, right? So you can get a sample, for example, or a pallet, a few boxes, let's say, but understand that they're not really interested in talking to you with that quantity. So without lying to them, make them understand that you're building a proper business, you have the right channels, or you're building the right channels, and like help them understand your story without lying to them. That's important.
Okay.
Right? But understand that the whole point of Alibaba.com is wholesale, big quantity stuff. You will not get a good price, even if you promise them the moon. Because what they care about is how much you buy now, right? Like, what are you buying now today?
Okay.
Right?
And what's the guarantee that next time you go through Alibaba to buy from them?
No guarantee, none.
So,
That's why you don't trust what you'll say, but you still have to lay down the foundation of the relationship building.
so it's mainly about meeting the other side through Alibaba rather than always buying through Alibaba?
You should still buy from Alibaba. I'll get to that, but you should buy directly from Alibaba and not transfer the money directly to the factory. Most of our buyers paid us directly, but we had the reputation and all that stuff. And we were the number 3 factory in China for electric mobility products. That's how big we were.
Did you used to work through Alibaba?
Us, yes. You can pay us directly or through Alibaba. But of course, we prefer directly because then we can use the money today, right? I'll come to that. But you as a first-time buyer in a relationship from your first purchase from that factory, you should only pay through Alibaba.
So like we have to.
It's called trade assurance. And you pay a little bit more money and you pay through Alibaba platform, just like paying Amazon, right?
But how as a manufacturer in China, you had to pay to Alibaba on like getting an order to you? Like Alibaba got you an order.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
The factory owner.
You were the factory over there.
Alibaba
How
will deal
much-
directly with the factory.
How much did you pay to Alibaba, like in commissions or something like? Did you also pay?
It's not a commission, it's a listing fee kind of thing. So you become a gold supplier, for example. I'll come to that. But there's a fee to be on Alibaba, and there's a yearly fee to be a gold supplier. So it's like a bot status. Okay? It does not guarantee good service. But almost, because nobody wants to lose their gold status because they paid stupid money for it. So it's an incentive for the factory to treat their buyers well, because they really care about their gold status. And the longer I'll come to that, we're coming ahead of the slide, but the longer they've been a gold member, the more safe you are because they really don't want to lose that status. So it's not a guarantee, but it's an incentive, right? It's one more protection for you. Okay. AliExpress, also owned by Alibaba, is really like Amazon. You know right away how much you'll pay. And they often have quantity discounts. So buy 3, you get 5% off or 3% off or something. And there's no negotiation, there's no back and forth. You can talk to the seller. Hey, can you help me source something else? I've done that, right? Because again, they all know each other. They're already in China, so they can source, right? 99.9%, I'm making up the number, but this is my opinion, is 99.9% of sellers on AliExpress are resellers. They're not factories. I'm not saying don't deal with them, but understand that they're not the factory. Assume by default, they're not the factory, because it's not worth the factory's time to deal with 1 t-shirt, 3 t-shirt, 5 t-shirts. They don't care, they're factory, right? They make containers. But it's a great way to get samples, to test your market, right? 5 of this and 5 of that and 10 of this and 20 of that, right? Now you're testing your market. You build a store and you test it out. Now you know what sells and what colors sell and what models sell. And now you can go back to Alibaba.com and negotiate with the factories to get pallets or bigger quantities. But if you're happy with your reseller, you can still talk on Alibaba.com and know what is the going price. And if you're talking to your reseller on AliExpress and the price is just a little bit different, but they're doing all the work for you, negotiating with factory and handling this, and right, because you built a relationship with them, potentially, then they can be your representative in China, for example. So I'm not saying never deal with these people. They can be a great resource for you, right? Because they want to get repeat customers. They want to keep you. The AliExpress guy wants to keep you as a repeat business. So at first, he can be your representative. And once you become big enough as a business, then of course you want to go straight to the factory, right? So there's many ways to get started. So I'm just giving you ideas, right? Options. So AliExpress.com has over 100 million worldwide users. It's the platform, period. And because you pay like Amazon, if there's anything bad, anything wrong, anything happens, well, AliExpress is on their side as a buyer, right? So you have more power. Don't cheat the factories, please. Like they work really hard for the money. But if they don't treat you well or something happens, then you have more leverage, more power, right? To try to make it right. So these two platforms, very, very important. Are we on time? Okay, I'll go faster. DHgate is also a good platform, not as powerful or as used as AliExpress, but it's still a great platform. I've used them myself. There's things I could find on DHgate that I could not find on AliExpress, for example. So look at both, see what's available. At least get ideas of what is selling well. And then you can go to Alibaba.com and try to find the source, for example. Okay. So if you're looking for ideas of products, AliExpress and DHgate is a great starting point. That's your Google for products, right? Like what's selling, what's hot. Always pay through the platforms, never straight to the seller or the factory, at least at first. Establish a relationship first. Gold status is a paid status. It's not earned. You can be you can register a factory, you can open a factory, register a business, and be a gold seller in a matter of days. Okay, it's paid. But how long they've been gold matters. The longer the better. I think my factory is like a 12 or 13 year gold seller right now. When you negotiate on Alibaba, here I'm talking quantity, like a 20-foot container, for example. Negotiate spare parts. You should be getting typically a 3 to 5% of the value of the container in spare parts.
Included with the price.
Right. And that's part of the negotiation. So on the e-bikes, what can go wrong? The speedometer, the controller often would break in shipping, for example, because it's a screen, right? An LCD screen. Spare motors, spare batteries, right? These are things you know that even if they don't break, people want more, or they want to replace, or things like that. Brake lines and brake pads, and
Consumable material.
right, or things that will have to be replaced or potentially broken by customers. People break stuff, right? That's just the nature. So,
Or maybe one or two additional units of what you're buying.
you're going to want to buy additional stuff too. So right now, this is negotiating spare parts, but you're going to want to buy, so you need a budget to buy spare stuff. I regretted not buying enough batteries. I underestimated how many extra batteries I would sell per e-bike because people want to double their range because the batteries are still fairly light. You can put it in your backpack. And now instead of 25 kilometers, you can do 50 kilometers. Okay. You have one battery charging while you're using one. And so people like the convenience. Batteries are not cheap. And so that's why I thought, who's going to buy a $500, $600 battery? Some people, surely, but not most of them. But I was wrong. Most people wanted a spare battery.
Especially in big cities.
A lot of my customers in Ottawa were government people living downtown, not wanting to use their cars. And they were using my e-bikes to go to work, government. Pre-COVID. I don't know that I would still be in business now during COVID, right? So in a way, I'm glad I closed the business. Or I would have to move completely online and forget my physical store. Factories don't care about your story. They don't care about you. They don't care about your business plan. Pierre, you told me you have to tell your story, yes, but the story doesn't sell, right? It just starts to build that relationship. But promising future quantities doesn't matter. I had a guy from Dubai that came to visit me for the segways, the stand-up segways, and he wanted to do ecotourism and things like that. Great business plan. But I don't care how much you're buying now, right? He wanted huge discount on future promised sales. I'm a factory, I can't do that. Come back with future big orders and I'll give you that discount.
This is
Right.
normal in Dubai. This conversation is normal in Dubai. I will buy from you huge amount on this.
But I can't do that. I'm a factory. I had 15% profit. How am I supposed to give you huge discount on 2 units? I can't, right? So what are you buying today? It's good to have a plan, don't get me wrong, but your price today will be based on the quantity you buy today, right? So a sourcing agent is a contractor who represents you, find products, negotiate pricing, contracts. Only a contract written in Chinese is valid in China. They can promise you the moon in English, it doesn't matter. They can promise you their firstborn son, it doesn't matter. Right? Only written in Chinese matters. Someone that can oversee the quality, the production, arrange shipping, all that stuff. A good agent is worth his or her weight in gold. How to find products, tradefairdates.com, which is not just China. This is worldwide trade fairs. Go to that website, check it out. And there's other websites like that. That's one example. So if you look by product or by industry, for example, you're going to see when it's happening. It's a very, very useful website and it's free. Hong Kong, most passports, most people from around the world can go to Hong Kong for 3 months, no visa. It's a visa on arrival, it's just a stamp into your passport. Super easy to go to Hong Kong. Okay, you don't need to plan it. You just buy your ticket and you go. Extremely welcome. If you want to go to the Canton Fair, which is about 1.5 to 2 hours away from Hong Kong, then you're going to need a Chinese visa. So Hong Kong has a separate immigration system than mainland China. Okay, you want to plan your Chinese visa in advance. So Guangzhou, which is the Canton Fair, Shanghai, Chengdu, there's many places across China that has fairs, but that's the 3 biggest ones. So between Hong Kong and Guangzhou and visiting the city of Shenzhen, you can find almost anything made in China. No matter where or what is made, it always ends up working its way to southern China. It's the high-tech part, it's where all the foreigners go. Like you don't even have to visit northern China, unless it's a unique product or something, or right? But chances are you can find it in southern China, whether in Shenzhen or Guangzhou, which is only 1 hour of the high-speed train ride. So between Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou, like you can find anything. So when it comes to traveling and
Shenzhen, you haven't mentioned it here?
because it's right beside, yeah. Shenzhen is where I lived. You can take the metro, the train, the subway train from Hong Kong to Shenzhen. You just get out the train, you go through immigration, you get back into the train, and then you're into the system. And then the Shenzhen train, metro can bring you to the high-speed train, which can bring you to Guangzhou. So you never basically leave the train system, and you can work your way all the way to Guangzhou from Hong Kong. You can also take a ferry to cross the channel from Hong Kong to Huizhou, or you can go to Zhuhai and other places. So all I'm saying is transportation in China is super efficient, super cheap, and super fast. Very easy. Very, very easy. And it's all written in English. So even as a foreigner who doesn't speak 1 word of Chinese, you can get around very easily. China has a gazillion new university graduates who are dying to speak English with you and make extra money. So to find a university student willing to be paid for a few days to help you arrange hotels and whatever, super easy. Super easy. China is extremely safe. I've never, in my 10+ years there, I've never once felt unsafe. Not even pickpocket type stuff. I mean, don't do it on purpose, but Normal common sense stuff, like I enjoy my beer and my wine, and 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, people will come to you and, hey, where are you from, and be nice to you, and just because they're curious and they want to get to know you. But it was never in a way to try to take advantage of me or something like that. Or I've made some great friends just sitting on the street. At night, like 9, 10 p.m. There's pop-up restaurants essentially. So the people doing the street barbecue and all that stuff, it just pops up. And so the whole sidewalks is nothing but food. And so it's normal to go out with friends at 9, 10 o'clock. And if you're sitting alone, I guarantee you won't be alone for long. People are extremely friendly and they want to sit with you and where you're from, and like in a good way, not trying to, make money or something from you, like just curious. I loved my time there. I really did.
So is honesty a value in China? A virtue,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
keeping your word and
Absolutely.
trying to be
Yes.
lying and things like that.
Yes. There's a concept in China called guangxi, which means relationships, but it's much more than a relationship. It's referrals through relationship. What if he's a lawyer and you ask me, Pierre, do you know a good lawyer? If I refer him to you and he cheats you or something happens, it's not only your relationship that's burnt, it's our relationship. So relationship is everything in China, which means trust and you're keeping your word and all that stuff. So I'm not saying nobody will ever cheat you, taxi driver for one, but like the average Chinese person will do their very, very best to do well by you. Really.
I noticed especially the port cities, they are open to others because they are welcoming different people from different nationality. So they are accepting different people easily. Not like,
And the local population is not local anymore because all the industry is there. So you have people from all over China moving there to work in factories and stuff. So by default, they're more open-minded.
yeah, so
Right.
this is.
It's a melting pot. There's 52 or 54 different cultures in China, right? Ethnic groups.
So they're accepting other easily.
So they're not Alejandro.
Most, yeah,
So
my wife is not Hanford, but yeah,
I'm just not, so like suppose I buy from AliExpress or
Yeah.
Alibaba, suppose I buy 500 pieces of the stuff.
yes.
How do I get it here now?
Let me get there.
So
We're out of time. I get it. I need to go really, really quickly. So there's ports in China. Almost everything is by boat, right? So you have Shenyang, Qingdao, Shandong province, which is the breadbasket of China. Zhengzhou, Shanghai, Xiamen, Guangzhou, Hong Kong. So it's all by the water, right? So depending where your product is manufactured, it will go typically to the nearest port. When you're negotiating with a factory, you're going to do what we call FOB, free on board. That's a negotiating, it's a shipping term, like by sea shipping term, which means that the factory is responsible to make the product, get in the container and get the container on the boat. That's the limit of their legal responsibility. Once it's on the boat, it's on you. So you better have shipping insurance and all that stuff.
Yeah, at
Like,
that point,
that's out of their
at
hands.
that point, if there is LC, so they will present this.
Most factories won't do
which
LC.
Which is very few, they will accept LC.
Yeah.
As you say.
Yeah.
At that time, they will present this to the bank and they will get them. They will
99.9% of factories you'll deal with will not accept LC.
accept them.
But you have a bill of lading, right? Which is who is the owner of that container or those goods in the container, for example. I'll come to that in a few slides, but the vast majority won't deal with LC at all. It's too complicated for them.
So is final payment against the bill of lading?
Correct. You're paying fully before the goods leave the factory,
Oh,
right?
even if it's FOB.
Yes. There's nothing leaving the factory until it's 100% paid.
They said they will send photos and these things and your representative and representative of the factory. So he will report to you, yes.
But that's why you want to pay directly through Alibaba and not to the bank account of the factory, right?
All right.
And often what happens is that people will try to give you their personal bank account, but it's illegal to receive business money in a personal account in China. But how are you supposed to know, right? They give you a bank account number and you transfer money, right? Like, how are you supposed to check that? Pay Alibaba,
Illegal for the sender or the receiver?
the receiver.
Okay.
Because you have no recourse. You pay this person for what? For what purpose? I don't know.
So
Right.
I hear that the personal tax is 45% in China. Is that correct?
Most Chinese pay zero tax. That's a different story. I had a Chinese company doing wine business and wine education and selling wine in my wife's name, because again, she's Chinese, it's easier. And we paid a very, like $30 a month or something. You pay tax no matter what in China, but it's like, it's a pittance, it's nothing. And there's so many ways to get paid without paying taxes. Most factories in China pay very, very little taxes. And if you export, there's a value of the goods being exported, which is a tax credit. And so all that to say, the factories typically pay no taxes in the end. Because there's ways to game the system. Yes, Favor, we're out of time. I want to go really, really quickly. Sorry,
Okay,
Grace.
so
Yeah.
are you saying that Alibaba would do the quality control check?
No, what they
Okay,
do is you pay through Alibaba,
Mhm.
and they have a service called trade assurance. And what they do is they will not release the money to the factory until you're happy with the goods.
Okay.
So there's a
okay,
small fee, but it's worth it.
Okay.
I strongly suggest you use that service, at least until you establish a good relationship with that factory. Okay,
Okay.
so common sense again, most of the imports into Canada come from road, right? Because it's from the US, as we talked earlier. So the big trucks, the big rigs, some by train and some by air, but the vast majority is by road. So we can do air freights, that's pallets, right? The wooden pallets, sometimes it's plastic, but it's usually wooden. By unit, some samples, for example. Sea shipping is by pallets. You do less than container loads, LCL. This is a great way to save money if you're not in a hurry. And so you're gonna share a container with someone. So it's your goods with other people's goods. They arrive at the port, let's say to Vancouver, and then they'll get split up and sent to their final destination. There's a risk there. If the person you're sharing a container with has dangerous goods, chemicals, and there's a spill or something happens, right? So you're taking a risk. You don't know who you're sharing with, and you don't control that. If you're not in a hurry again, and if you're willing to wait, it's a great way to save money. There's logistic companies fully focused, all they do is LCL. Okay. By container, typically you do a 20-foot or 40-foot container. The vast majority of my containers that we shipped out was 20-foot. Whatever you want, right? But most customers, they want a big discount, but they want less risk and less investment. So 20-foot is a good balance. By ground freight, of course, train and truck. So when I brought my goods from Shenzhen, China to Ottawa, I had two options. I could send it to the Port of Montreal, or I could send it to the Port of Vancouver and then by train or truck from Vancouver to Ottawa. And I did both depending on what was cheaper, because I was planning, I was doing in advance, right? So I had the luxury of choosing the cheapest option. So another reason why you want to plan in advance, right? So LCL, like I said, your goods get mixed with other people, it gets to the destination port, and then it works its way to Ottawa or wherever you want the goods delivered. What if you do Amazon FBA, for example? Amazon might tell you, send, X pallets there and pallets here, so they might tell you how to split it up, for example. Free on board is what I talked about earlier. So the responsibility, this is a legal responsibility, it's a legal term, okay? So the factory is responsible until the goods are on the boat, and after that, it's on you. Most factories will quote you pricing based on FOB. Free on board. Pierre, how do I know how many t-shirts, how many boxes, how many this, how many that can I put in a container? Ask a factory. They do this all day, every day. They know exactly what fits in a container. Okay, so you can trust them on that side. They do this all day, every day. They'll calculate it for you. So don't stress dimensions and volume. The factory, that's their job. They'll help you. You'll get a performer invoice, sometimes a commercial invoice. For the factory, it's the same thing, they don't care. They'll give you an invoice, basically. You'll get a bill of lading, well, you won't get it, but the shipping company will. That's the legal ownership, that's in the old days of shipping, with the sailboats and all that stuff, like who is the legal owner of those goods until they arrive at destination? Right? Sometimes the goods are not fully paid. If you have a very good relationship with the factory and you bought them from them before and all that stuff, you might get away with 50% down and 50% on arrival. I've done it with like the Korean guy that I told you about because he bought container after container. But we also got cheated, which I also told you about, by the French company, right? They bribed somebody to get the goods released even though it wasn't fully paid. So it's a risk for the factory. So don't expect it. Yeah.
In the later stage, we are using the container and the trailer bring the container to the shop, so they will take it back or we have to empty it same time. So how it will happen this? And
You don't own the container. You empty it and then the container leaves.
So immediately we have to.
Yes.
And
Unless you bought the container, you can buy it.
Maybe they will give 2 or 4 hours to empty it. That's.
Pretty much. So my store was on Montreal Road. And I chose that store specifically because there was a bay that I could use to unload the containers. We had about 2 hours or so, I think.
So unloading it is our responsibility.
Yes.
Forklift, whatever required. we
Correct.
have to do.
Correct, it's on you. Unless you arrange that with the logistics company, which is possible, but they're gonna charge you up the yin yang, like they're gonna charge you a lot. A friend of mine had 220 volt appliances like fridges and that kind of stuff. They're from the US in a container, but from the US. And FedEx is who we got it through, and they charge them like $600 and they left it on the sidewalk. And it was his responsibility then to get it from the sidewalk into his store. Because his store didn't have the bay to back up directly into the. So you can make arrangements, but you're gonna pay for it.
So we have to consider it.
Yes. Yeah. Customs broker, you're gonna need a broker to help you bring the goods into Canada. Okay? Even if your goods are duty free. So my e-bikes were duty free because it's a green product. But I paid 5% to the customs broker to a deal with all the paperwork and all that stuff. So it was 5% of the value of the goods, the declared value of the goods. Factories will offer you to under declare the value. Don't do it. You're trying to save money, don't do it. One, you can be in trouble with the government, obviously, but two, if you fight them because there was something wrong, well, the declared value is X, so what is your legal recourse? It's based on what you're claiming was a value, right? So for many reasons, don't do it. The factory will do whatever you want.
Even the tax here will be also high. If the unit is $100 and I
Right.
estimated $40, so then when I will sell it at 200, so the government will say 200 minus 40, isn't it? This is my profit.
They don't really check, to be honest.
Okay.
I've never seen them check anyone's
They
good.
are depending on 13.5% of the sale price.
Right.
Regardless.
Right,
And do they charge import duty on the invoice? Based on the invoice?
correct. They look into what is the declared value of the goods, right? So we're a bit over time. Any questions? Of course, you're always welcome to email me if I didn't answer your questions. I just want to introduce concepts to you, right? Things you want to think about and plan for. If you have a specific question, you're always welcome to email me. So I'll put my email in the chat box as well. So I'll stop sharing. Here at oclf.org. So Ottawa Community Loan Fund.
I'll stop the recording.
Okay. Any questions about